Welcome to Laptop Radio. Today's topic is Hyphenate Live, and we have Nathan Yee with us, and he is the founder of Hyphenate.
What's
How you
up?
doing, Nathan? What's up? How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Welcome. Where are you now?
I'm actually in San Jose right now. It's pretty hot today, so luckily I'm inside. We have AC because it is hot outside.
Awesome. We have AC right here, but yesterday I was in the office and it was super hot. Of course, there were earthquakes as well.
Yeah, this is really cool. I'm excited to share a little bit more of what I've been working on and kind of what we are envisioning for how to make this world a better place. I'm kind of hoping that's what a lot of other founders and creators are hoping to build for, and that's
Mhm.
kind of where we're at.
Awesome. First, tell us about you.
Yeah, so I am a Bay Area native. I had quite an eclectic career, I would say. I actually started my career off in Korea. So once I graduated, I went to a small private university called Cal Baptist in
Mhm.
Riverside. And I went to Korea for about 4 years after I graduated. And that was a lot to kind of connect with my roots. And in a lot of ways, I guess it's foreshadowing to what I created today with Hyphenate,
Mhm.
but it at the time I just had this strong urge to go and explore and understand the cultural kind of roots of being Korean hyphen American. And yeah, it started from a trip that was supposed to be 6 months, and then it got extended out to 4 years. Basically ended up getting a job there and staying there. And before I went, I couldn't speak any Korean. I couldn't speak any, didn't know any Korean. And then I was able to learn it. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and it started from there. So I guess started in Korea and then eventually came back to the Bay after 4 years, traveled around quite a bit, been to almost 40 countries. And in the past 10 years, I've been in tech. And so my most recent position in tech was a kind of a hybrid between a project manager and an analyst, like a data or business analyst.
Mhm.
And since then, I actually had a little bit of time as a florist and
Mhm.
then as a
Wow.
stylist. I did a couple classes in fashion. And now I am a full fledged travel product designer and building a brand, trying to connect the world and encourage people to travel and explore.
Awesome, awesome. I love this. And let's talk about your brand, Hyphenate. And I love the name, of course. As an Asian American, I can relate to that. And why don't you tell us about Hyphenate and what it is?
Yeah, Hyphenate is really an ethos that I really want to put all my energy and effort behind. It's really around acknowledging the diversity in people that have a hyphenated identity. And it's grown to become an idea that's a bit larger than what I initially conceived it as. But to try and focus on that one area where it started, it was born from me being a Korean hyphen American. And I looked into, I love etymology. I love looking into kind of where things started and how
Mhm.
things began. And so I looked into the beginnings of that term hyphenate and then also how it was used in history. And in the early 1900s, around like 1920s and 30s, I believe, there was a time when immigrants coming from Europe, a lot of people coming from Poland, Germany, Hungary,
Mhm.
they were coming into America through the East Coast and they were being called hyphenates.
Mhm.
And that was because they were not seen as an American and they were also not being recognized as being their countrymen or countrywomen.
Mhm.
And when I found that, I immediately was like, yes, this is the name. This is what I want. This is what I stand for because automatically, just from that story, anyone that has an immigrant background or has multicultural identity
Mhm.
can understand of being in that limbo and being in that middle space. And so I was like, I'm going to create a brand that is for these people, for those voices.
Yeah, and I feel like as a hyphen, you're A or you're B, or you could be A B, and sometimes you're A nor B.
Yeah, yeah.
So what does that mean? It could be a limbo or it could be a strength because you can speak different languages. You're an American, of course, because you go to McDonald's and sorry about that.
Yeah, no,
But it,
no,
it's
no, no.
true, right? I mean, I've been eating McDonald's every day because I do not cook.
Their menu's gotten better. I love their food.
Because I do not know how to cook, and it's just less risk going to a
Yeah,
drive-through than going into a restaurant right now.
yeah.
And
I hear you. I hear you. And
and I
so,
watch cartoons as
mhm.
American. So what does it mean to be an American and to be hyphenated?
I think that is really a question that I've noticed that not everyone feels the need to ask, but there are people that inevitably end up asking it, and those are typically people that come from immigrant backgrounds or have just a multicultural heritage. And it's the point of hyphenate is that that definition should be allowed to be defined by that individual. So I can't even say. So I can just speak from my perspective of what it means to be a blend of Korean and American,
Mhm,
which is simply that my mindset and my worldview has been largely shaped by my American upbringing. And so I have a lot of tendencies to be very individualistic, to have a lot of unwarranted confidence as an American, to want to always push boundaries and to explore and to have a yes, we can kind of mentality.
mhm,
But then also from the Korean side, I have a lot of natural kind of tendencies and desires to build community. There's a thing in Korean or that Koreans know as chung,
mhm,
and that's a simple way to put it is an unspoken connection with a fellow person that
mhm,
you see some sort of like connection with or a relationship with. And a lot of Koreans will have that chung with one another.
mhm.
And that to me is something that I've always had in my life without even knowing. And so there are a lot of things being Korean that I just had and I never even knew.
I wanted to ask you about assimilation because since you spoke about the blend, and I think the blend is awesome. However, sometimes you're not blended, and I think you know what I mean. So sometimes when you're at work, you know that you're different because I worked at different organizations where there's not a lot of people who look like me,
Hmm.
and there's of course a lot of curiosity. And as an Asian hyphenated American woman, there's not a lot of role models, right?
Hmm.
Every time people say that look like someone, they happen to be women who are half naked or in the porn industry. I remember that even when I was building a company, one of the women asked me if I was building a porn industry, and I thought that was very disrespectful because why would I? Like
Yeah, it's very
what? Like
presumptuous.
yes, I was just really shocked, and I was also questioned about my attorney friends. And as an attorney who worked at different Fortune 500 companies, of course, I have attorney friends. What kind of friends would I have, right?
Hmm.
And just really going through that process of blending in and not blending in, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
We talk about cultural assimilation, but there's also structural assimilation that we still haven't really blended in 100% in light of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah. Simple way to put it is that I really envision Hyphenate to be a landing page for people that are tired of explaining that. Speaking to other fellow hyphenates, if there are those interactions where someone is like asking you, like, are you American? Are you this? Are you that? Or are you just two things, two, three, four, five things? The vision is that you would just say, hey, check out this website, and this will help you understand kind of the importance of trying to let someone else or the person themselves explain their narrative, explain their position, explain their identity. You don't have the right to say, explain it to me succinctly, explain it to me comprehensively, explain it to me so I can understand. Like, no, it's my identity. I'm figuring it out. I'm trying to understand it. And why do I have to put it in a bite sized kind of bucket for you? And so, a framework that I have that actually helps kind of explain this concept is the concept of an identity is really a spectrum. I think the LGBTQ plus community has really paved a way for that to be something that's more commonly understood, more easily understood. It might trigger some people depending on their political stance on that, but the concept of there being a spectrum of identity as far as just heritage goes or culture,
Mhm.
I think is very appropriate in terms of understanding the importance of letting that person dictate their narrative, dictate who they are. And so obviously I'm very supportive of that usage of the spectrum within the LGBTQ community as well. And so that's something that, in a way, has been a framework that we've been able to emulate to be able to explain what hyphenate is. As a Korean American, I'll just speak to Korean Americans. If you put 10 Korean Americans in a room, there's not going to be one person or two people that have the exact same experience. We're going to be on a spectrum. There's going to be on one end of the spectrum, I see as someone that was born with one parent that's from Korea, one parent that is from America. And then they are like a true hyphenate. They are a blend of, they're like the most, like physically a blend as well as culturally a blend. And then on the other side, you have someone that recently moved to America from Korea, or recently moved to Korea from America. They are like a baby hyphenate. They are in the beginning stages of understanding that they have a dual identity. And so in that spectrum of having to deal with that identity, we need to give power to the person themselves to want to explain or not want to explain. Because like you said, it's A, you will be either A or B, A and B, or maybe just A and maybe just B. It's like quantum identity. You can be both. It's no longer binary.
This is so funny because I was recently, I think just 2 days ago, I was looking into a book called Quantum Psychology.
Yeah.
And it looked into the concept of I am and the
Mhm.
concept of to be.
Yep.
And so sometimes when you really
Yep.
think
Yep.
about
Yep.
identity, you think about, oh, I'm a teacher. However, you're not a teacher all the time. Sometimes you're eating, and when you're eating, you're not a teacher. So when I'm talking to you as a friend and not that parent-child relationship that therapists have with their client, but just more of an adult friend, I'm not teaching you and you're not teaching me. We're just
Mhm.
cool, right?
Mhm.
I'm not a teacher in that sense. So if you're an engineer, you're not an engineer all the time. Sometimes when people say, hey, I'm Asian, sometimes people really look at your race. And even if you did not bring it up, people ask you where you're from, which is really annoying to me because what if I don't know? What if it's just
Mm.
a history that's really hard to explain and you don't want to be shallow about it? And what if it doesn't matter? What if I just am as a person, as a human, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you want that psychology or that being to be quantum, but sometimes you want it to relate or blend. I think it is really interesting, and it's that sense of self when it really comes down to it. And if that self, is it okay if I'm just am? I just am. Like sometimes I'm poor, sometimes I'm wealthy, sometimes I'm Asian, sometimes I'm Asian American, sometimes I'm just American, sometimes I'm a teacher, sometimes I'm a developer,
Yep.
and sometimes I'm just cool, you know, and is that
Yep.
okay?
Yeah. What we've come up with at Hyphenate is, in my opinion, the most practical and fairly eloquent way of someone being able to define that for themselves.
Mhm.
And the first product that we have is a bag. It's a travel bag, and
Awesome.
it's a crossbody. It's not too big. It's a 3.5 liter, and so it's a crossbody bag, and it's really designed for the moments where you are traveling. So not like when you are loading up stuff for the airport or when you've checked into your hotel, but the actual moments where you're moving, where you're transitioning, when you're actually traveling. This bag is optimized for those experiences. And the bag is going to be coming with a journal. And so that is pretty much the best way, in my opinion, for someone to be able to, one, really test and refine and understand their identity is through travel, because then it takes you out of your element and then you have to be you. You can no longer go with your reputation. You can't go with cultural norms. You can't use abbreviated explanations. You have to understand who you are because people are going to start asking about you,
Mhm.
and you're going to also have to understand where you come from because people are going to ask about that. And so traveling, I think, is beautiful in that sense. But then the journal also is, in a way for you to kind of distill that understanding of yourself. And the way I envision it in the future, which would be amazing, is if someone really wants to get to know you, it would be amazing if we could get to a point of saying, here, read this journal that I did reflecting on my identity, reflecting on myself, and you will understand better of who I am. And I think that would be extremely intimate, extremely intentional, and that would, in a lot of ways, make for a better society.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
that's kind of my hope and dream is that people will have this one journal that explains who they are to themselves, and they can reiterate on that journal over and over and over, and then eventually they'll have a perfected kind of idea of themselves. Of course, it's going to be constantly evolving, but then
Yeah.
they'll have an idea of themselves and they can share that with others.
I love the journaling. I'm an avid journalist
Yep, journaling
myself.
is the best.
Journaling
It
is
is
the best.
literally the cheapest and best form of therapy that a person could
Yeah.
ever have.
Well, just writing down your thoughts. I started doing that when I was in grade school, I believe. And then I stopped doing that. And I feel like after I left being a corporate attorney, I feel like I wanted to spend time discovering who I am and who I was.
Yeah,
I used to be a writer. How did I write before? What was my voice like? And I was a web developer, technical writer for tech companies before I became a lawyer. How was I a designer before? What kind of art did I like? I think I wanted to talk about consciousness because I think Twitter and a few of the social media platform brings out a lot of superficiality because you have one tweet and that's it and it's meaning, but it's not really meaning. I'm not on Twitter a lot because I don't really understand it. Like I'll read one thing, but there's just so many like buts and everything that I thought of, right?
yeah,
And so I don't really like to participate in it. And Instagram is a picture, but yet it doesn't have meaning. I guess
yeah,
sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes it's just so superficial. And so when you talk about depth, because I think that's what journaling allows you to do, is rediscovering and discovering depth and yourself, and then
yep,
allows other people to share that experience, that depth. It's almost like reading a book, and it's your autobiography that is self-written in a way.
yep. And I think there's the thing that is almost impossible to capture with social media is a feeling of being special. So
Mhm.
the closest feeling of being special is for some people is to be one of the first commenters on a viral post or someone that makes a viral post and like you get a lot of attention from it. But in terms of there being one of those rare connections, it's very hard. Like for example, the way I think about it very simply is like if you get flowers for someone.
Mhm.
If you give flowers to somebody, it's very hard to give flowers to everybody. And unfortunately, when you give flowers, you pick one person. Therefore, you have not picked everyone else. And so the idea is when you do that, it means a lot. It means more that you are giving flowers to this one person.
Mhm.
You can give flowers to more and more people, etc. But then the idea is that when you give flowers to a person, it's a symbol that this person means something to you. And now change that flower for a journal that you spent hours and days and weeks and maybe years in perfecting. This in itself is one of the most meaningful pieces of content that you will ever have. And so this piece of content, you don't even want to share with everyone because there's a lot of vulnerability with it. There's a lot of meaning behind it, and you want to give a lot of care to it. And so when you share that with someone, be like, hey, I think you're a good friend of mine, and I want you to get to know me. Here's a journal about me from me. That is so powerful. It's like one of the most powerful things that you could possibly create. And the brand, that's kind of what we're putting our bet on essentially, is that people can create their most powerful content.
I agree with you. For me, to share my journal with you, you have to be super, super special.
Oh,
Almost
yeah.
like the flower in The Little Prince.
Yep.
Because, like Nathan just said, in The Little Prince, basically he said that there were tons of flowers, but it's that one particular flower that
Yep.
he likes.
Yep. The
And
rose.
because, especially with journaling, because I'm such a geek that sometimes I don't even want to mess up my journal. I use like special pens and washi tapes because I'm super nerdy that way. And I write it really carefully so that it looks really nice.
For sure.
If I were to share it with you, you have to be super, super amazing. Most likely, there has to be a lot of trust because that's your innermost thoughts.
Yep. And so that's kind of the overall vision of it. So bag for travel, and then it comes with a journal for you to be able to distill your experiences and kind of your self-revelations and your ideas into that journal. And then the third stage of it would be able to somehow share that journal or refine that journal. That would be the ultimate kind of like goal of what Hyphenate envisions. And if that's possible, I think I think we could help the world in terms of like stress, depression, anxiety, feeling lost, all these things, I think would just naturally, it would correct itself if that level of intentionality and thought was put into it.
Let's talk about self acceptance though, because I think self acceptance is really cool. And I say it's
Yeah.
cool because I think in the age of social media, everyone wants to be famous. They want to have big amount of likes and a lot of followers and fans and everything.
Mhm.
Sometimes people do marketing because that's their job, but it causes a lot of depression and people cutting themselves because you can be overwhelmed and feel like you're not enough. And it's that
Mhm.
concept of self-love and self-acceptance, which is really important because it's kind of like clothes. You can go to Gap and buy a cookie cutter shirt, or I can go to a boutique designer and get something a little bit different. And it is that. Do you want to be the same as everyone, or do you want to be that person that is a little bit different, which is okay. I think it's kind of important to have our own independent mind and to have our own independent interests, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I can like frogs. And it should be okay that I like frogs. For a lot of women who are listening out there, if you're a woman and you like computer, that should be okay because it's not a guy thing. You just basically code. You just writing a different language, just like learning English or learning Spanish. That should be okay. I like your brand Hyphenate because I feel like there's parts of it that has that self acceptance and self love, because sometimes when you move up the ladder in the corporate worlds, you'll see and experience glass ceiling, right?
Mhm.
You might not be promoted. Someone will maybe chosen over you. You know, people might downplay your skill set. You see a lot of that. And you can complain about it, you can leave, you can find another job, or you can just really hate where you came from, your culture,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Or you could accept it and say, hey, this is me. If you have, or if that entity or that company has that limitation, you might want to devote your time to someone else, another entity that appreciates that diversity and perception of you, whether you're a woman, unhyphenated American.
Yep. You pretty much hit the nail on the head with that in the sense that, so my understanding of self-acceptance is actually very closely intertwined with being accepted in a
Mhm,
tribe or in a community.
mhm.
Because self acceptance is such a hard task and near impossible for someone to do without a community. I think giving people the challenge of saying, love yourself, accept yourself, is unfair, actually, in a lot of ways, because we're our harshest critics. We know all of our darkest secrets, we know all of our failures, we know all of our expectations. And so it's really hard to love something that you can see all the imperfections, all the way down. And so my point is though, is that it can happen. It can happen, but then it also helps to be accepted and to find a community, to find a tribe that not only accepts you, but like you said, is loves you for it. And so the fastest growth for someone to be able to heal, I've seen, and just kind of my personal experience is when I felt like I was allowed to love myself, when I felt like I was allowed to be myself, because that's the first barrier, is to give myself permission. And to get that permission for myself, it a lot of times came from like external sources. And then it feeds on itself. So then I give myself permission so I can do it. I can carry my own burden. I can carry my own struggles. But then it's also with the help of a community, help of friends, help of, this new group that I found, or help from like friends that I made. And that I think is what is going to build this society into an interwoven supportive community, because to say love yourself is one thing, but then it just silos people ultimately.
I think I challenge that a little bit because I think it's kind of important that we have our own autonomy. It's kind of like the number eight, or even being in a relationship. What I mean is, you have one person, person A on one end,
Hmm.
and then person B on the other end, and say they're in a relationship, okay? I could just use Alice and Bob because Alice and Bob were kind of popular. So say they're in a relationship. Alice goes out and does her thing, and Bob goes out and does his thing. He is an identity, and she is also an identity. But they're in a relationship, and so they together is an identity. But sometimes people see the togetherness as an identity, or that it could be a relationship, it could be a community, and they forget that A is itself an identity and B itself is identity. And I say that because it's kind of important to realize that, because they can be together and they can be away together, and that makes the relationship work in a better sense, because I think we're taught to be codependent in a way, because when you really look at all the Disney princesses, there's always that need of a prince or someone helping them. However, I'm not saying that community is not important. I'm just saying that it's important for a person to have his or her core. Because when you really think about it, Nathan, I think you're cool. And I know that sometimes you messed up. And for me to accept that you're cool, even though you messed up, first I need to really accept myself and that I messed up as well. It's really the reflection that whatever I see in you, I can see in me.
Right.
I think it's kind of important that individuality, that self, it's not glorified. It's more of, it's humbled. I know you messed up, but it's okay. And I can't be too hard on you because I mess up too. So because I accept your flaw, I also accept my own flaw. I think you kind of have to do that first, and then you integrate yourself with community. Because I think even Gary Vee said that sometimes people can say good things about you, and you're like, oh my gosh, someone said good things about you, and you did a good job. But the same people that say that could say that you do a good job, years later you mess up, they will say that you mess up, and then you'll feel really bad. So I think it's kind of important to have that coreness of the self, so that when people compliment you or even say that you mess up, you're still like that core of you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what my point was is that it's both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for different people, the order of which is easier to overcome that initial obstacle can vary.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. For
I know.
some people, it's harder to get that momentum to really figure out yourself. But I agree, at the end of the day, you need to understand your core. So there's 3 stages of kind of this hyphenated identity that I've been toiling over. And so hyphenate comes in 3 stages as a person. So to be a hyphenated person, I see 3 stages being broken up into the heritage part, the identity part, and then just the pure hyphenate part. And so heritage is, so our slogan is this, that. So it's this hyphen that. And the heritage part is saying that you are exploring, drawing from, discovering what the this and that is of whatever hyphen you identify as or identify with. And that can be with your career, like let's say you're an entrepreneur by day and comedian by night, and just trying to figure out where's the middle ground in that. Or maybe you just have different hobbies, and it can be any 2 things. And so it's understanding the history behind it, the origins of it, like the big milestones, the big players in that industry or in that field or in that part of history or in that culture. That's the this and that. So once you understand that, or once you've really spent time to devote yourself to, at least appreciating where you come from or how you identify, then there's the middle part, the identity portion.
Mm-hmm.
The identity portion is now seeing how you fit within those 2 things. Because inevitably, we come from somewhere. We have origins, we have roots somewhere. And it's to figure out where we fit within that. And that's going to be ever changing. And so that's kind of drawing in a mix of Eastern and Western philosophy and perspectives, and being that, like the classic yin yang kind of stereotypical way of thinking, everything has harmony, everything has balance. I'm challenging that by mixing it a little bit with the Western philosophy of that I get to create my own destiny, of I get to create my narrative, I get to create my path. Because in a lot of ways that challenges harmony. That challenges the balance of 2 things. And I think both are correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so the identity portion is that you are no longer a static human being. You are no longer stuck in what other people or where society puts you. You are ever growing, ever changing, ever evolving. But you have to define where you stand. So it's like you said, it's the I am. There's the identity portion. And then the last part is the legacy. And so it's heritage, identity, and legacy. And legacy is what you're talking about. And legacy is where I strongly agree, is that when you've been able to essentially absorb the this and that, you're just a hyphenate. You have become the hyphenate. And so you have become someone that's known for your identity, that's known for what you've done and what you've accomplished. You no longer have to explain anything. People already know. And people, if they don't know, they can easily find out from your reputation, from your work, from all these things. And so to become a hyphenate, it takes time because it's not going to be something that you determine. It's going to be something that's determined by everything around you. And you've accomplished it when it's so clear to everyone around you simply by you existing, by doing what you do, by continuing to be who you are. And I think that just takes time to become that hyphenate. And I think some people can get it earlier on, but then they're going to have to continue to explain to people because they don't have as much clout or leverage or experience or work to explain it for them. So they're going to continuously have to explain. But it's easy to do it. So once you get there, then you have to constantly kind of put yourself through the fire again and be like, is this really me? And it's natural because you'll be doing what you feel like is your calling, and that will be your natural refinery. You're going to come out as you every single time, and it's going to be stronger and stronger and stronger. And then, like you said, if you find a partner, then it becomes another journey. And then you find the connection between you two, but then also don't lose yourself in that. And so it's a constant balance. And what it comes down to for me is everything that, being a kid, I was never good at multiple choice. If I ever was given multiple choice, I'd be like all the above, always, and I will make it
Same.
happen.
What is your legacy, or who are you? I mean, and what is your purpose? And I feel like I wanted to ask you that because I feel like I don't really know what my purpose is. I
Hmm.
wanted to make the world a better place. I think working as an attorney in a corporation is not my legacy because you just basically
Hmm.
help a company become really wealthy, and they did. Okay.
Hmm.
However, that's not my legacy. And I feel like I'm just looking for that. But at the same time, I feel like I am purposed. I am legacy.
Yep. And so for me, my legacy that I guess I'm currently in the process of manifesting in a way is that I truly feel myself as being a connector.
Hmm.
I've been that my whole life. And, to have a brand called Hyphenate is like the ultimate connecting
It's so
kind of,
you, though. When I heard that from you, I was just like, this is so you.
and that's what I mean. Like I've leaned into that.
Hmm.
And I know that there are many people that are also have a similar makeup as I do in terms of loving to connect people and wanting to see fruits of two totally different things or similar things come together and kind of flourish. But in a very simple sense, ever since I was a kid, like I was the one that organized barbecues for my high school friends to come over and we would eat and chill. I was the one that put together family reunions for distant cousins and relatives to come out and hang out with the family. I'm still the only person that's really bridging a lot of the family. Like I'm the only one that is in contact with a lot of cousins or aunts and uncles that don't talk to other family members. And a lot of it has to do with my kind of ability to be flexible and to accommodate for different people, but also just knowing the importance of keeping things together. And that's been my kind of MO for a long time. And so, in a way, I want to use that skill, that ability. Like one of my favorite talents, I would say, is it's extremely easy for me to make strangers into friends or become friends with a stranger. It comes so natural to me. Anybody I can be friends with. And the weirdest part about it is that I follow up with these friends. It might be just reaching out like once or twice a year, but I keep in touch with almost everyone that I've met throughout my life. Like the other day, I was talking to a guy that I connected up when I was traveling in France and I was walking on the streets and I couldn't get a hostel. And he was a university student at the time. And he said, "Hey, do you want to stay at our dorm?" And he said it in French. I didn't speak any French, but we eventually understood each other. And I slept in his dorm room.
I love hostel
Yep.
because they're kind of fun.
Yep, yep. It's a serendipity pit. It's like a mystery place. You go there and you never can expect what's going to come out of it.
There's a nice hostel in Chicago. I think it's like 5 stars. I've been to Chicago and stay at a fancy hotel.
Yeah.
I've been in Chicago where I stayed in a hostel, but I think staying in a hostel is kind of fun because you meet friends instantly. I
Yeah.
mean, for the culture.
I see hostels as a startup environment, like a true startup. And then I see hotels as corporate. It's a very similar vibe. You see people kind of like scrappy, trying to figure stuff out, super excited, a lot of energy,
Yeah,
versus like proper. You better wear your cocktail outfit to dinner and all these
yeah,
things.
yeah. And then people don't talk to each other. They're just reading a book and just kind of in themselves. And
Everyone's posturing and
yeah,
everyone's like,
everyone's
yeah.
posturing, and of course, I like in New York, I stay at the Astoria, so it's like red carpet and really
Oh
nice.
my. Yep.
And then you stay at a hostel, and everyone is so friendly. You listen to music together.
My favorite part in all that though is that the people in the hotels, the people at Astoria, they're just as friendly. They're just as
Oh
kind.
yeah, they are
But
kind of
then
people.
but it's just very difficult to get to that layer
Hmm.
because of the setting. And it's
Yeah,
just so funny to see that because those people might also love being at a hostel, but they just happen to be at a hotel that day. And you see
yeah,
them
no,
in
no, no,
their
yeah. You
hotel
can't judge.
attitude. It's just so funny to see that.
You can't judge people. Sometimes I'll go to a musical by myself when I go to
Yeah.
Chicago. And then sometimes I'll stay at a hostel just because I wanted to make friends and it's fun. As someone who actually likes different experiences, it's hard to judge. You can't. Some of my friends are millionaires who stay at the hostel actually. They're just there because every year they go there for just to visit and to explore. And you love to travel. I think you understand. Traveling is just not about going to a hotel and then visit all these touristy places. When I travel now, I've been to a lot of places like you. I'll go to a place, but I'll be normal. Like I'll
Yeah.
walk to different places, I'll meet different people. And I don't need to visit all the touristy places because most likely I'll be there again. And so I think it's just a little bit more fun that I'm a little bit more spontaneous when I travel. And then when you meet people, you wanted to understand the culture, you wanted to understand what a museum stands for or why or the history behind something. So I think it's a little bit more interesting when you look at exploration in that kind of way.
Yeah, and so my last job, my job was to analyze data, right? I had to interpret customer experiences through
Mhm.
data. And that is very much, I think, the way I've been living my life anyway. So my past data of my interactions in life have pointed me into where I am today. So in the past, like when I was traveling in, let's say, let's talk about France again. So I was in Paris.
Mhm,
I didn't go to the Louvre.
mhm,
I drove by the Eiffel Tower.
mhm.
Didn't have any desire to go up it. Didn't see the arch. Like I didn't even see Notre Dame.
Don't remember.
I was essentially meeting people off the streets. I was already making connections with people because what I really wanted was to create some connection with somebody so that I had more reason to come back.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the big theory or hypothesis that we're going off of at Hyphenate is that people are more likely to travel to a place where they know somebody,
Mhm.
and it could be somewhere completely random. Like let's say if I am living in Tanzania and I tell my friend that never had any interest in visiting Africa to come visit me, it's much easier to have them come visit if I'm there versus if no one is there.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the idea. And like the part of building that community is really, that's at the core of what Hyphenate is. It's really about trying to get people to explore these new areas and then kind of break ground in that new area for them, to know somebody there or to know something about that place, to make it interesting, to kind of pique that curiosity. And then ultimately have them make the step of whether it be buying the train or plane or whatever ticket and getting over there and just checking it out.
You know what is so funny with Uber and Lyft is that before when you traveled, people pick you up at the airport.
Yep.
Now with Lyft and Uber, people don't really do that anymore. And it's
Hmm.
really like cold and dry, right?
Yeah.
So Like even if you're visiting your cousin in another country, you could just take Lyft to the airport. But you know that feeling where someone's waiting for you at the airport,
Oh my goodness. That makes
right?
all the
You,
difference in the world.
you know what I mean, right?
Yep.
So sometimes when I have friends who travel, I will pick them up at the airport just because I know that they could pay,
It
for
feels way
something.
better.
It's a lot better, right?
It feels so much better.
Exactly. And that
Yep.
is community. That is family,
That
right?
is being human.
That is being human. It's that
That's being
feeling.
human.
Yes.
Yep.
It's that. Like, I'm like, so, because I travel a lot and I've Ubered everywhere
Hmm.
and the international Uber companies or whatever, like apps all over the world. But it's that feeling of someone being there waiting for you and even dropping you off to the airport. I
Yep.
think that's pretty cool.
That's really the dream that we're trying to build towards because people have essentially kind of fallen victim to the operations and systems of the current way that society operates. And
Mhm,
it's making sure that you are the right gear, the right size, the right cog in a wheel, or that you're operating correctly as a customer or as a user. Like
mhm.
you need to be following the service design guideline. And if you're not, you're deviant and will accommodate for you by making a new experience for you.
And then
But to be human is to make your own path. To be human is to be an individual.
yeah. And then that kind of go into your story of what your legacy is, because I didn't think that my legacy is me being an awesome attorney,
Mhm.
even though I was. I think my legacy is something that I will choose or I'm discovering or identifying with. And if your legacy is being a collector or connecting people or bridging people, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think that our legacy has to be something that society constructed to be what it is. It does not have to be, oh my God, my legacy is a 100,000 followers on Twitter. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that. It could be something that is more human.
Hmm. Can I take a stab at what I see as your legacy?
Yes, that's
Because
so scary.
no,
Yeah.
I see it. I see it. And I think you'll identify with it. I see your legacy as a person that has been able to see potential and really make that potential blossom or grow. And you can do that because you're also someone that's put in the time, effort, blood, sweat in whatever you're interested in. And so that's what makes it so easy for you to see potential is that you have a lot of context, you have a lot of interest, you have a lot of passion in whatever you're pursuing. And so if you see something and you see potential in it, it's not just that you have a feeling, it's you have like experience.
I'm pretty,
Like you
yeah, I'm pretty crazy about that. That's true.
yeah, and so that's what it comes down to is that it's other people can maybe it's like listening to music, right? You can sometimes tell that a song is going to be a hit because it's a feeling and you can
Mhm.
kind of get a vibe of it. But then when it comes to something larger picture, when it comes to a project, when it comes to something that's more contextual, like I from knowing you, the little that we've, been able to interact, actually we've interacted quite a bit. But then like kind of knowing you, you have a knack for one being able to smell BS. And then the other thing is to be able to on the flip side, see even the smallest hint of potential and say, this is, you can double down on that. You can bet big on this one, and I can promise you this is going to pay out. And so I think that's a wonderful legacy to have.
That's true.
There you go. Told you. I figured you'd identify with it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I do. I tend to be pretty nuts about certain things.
Yeah.
What is one advice that you would like to provide to the community?
The last piece of advice that I want to give to anyone that's listening is it is okay to be you and it's okay to be different and to be complicated because that's who you are. And you don't have to feel like you have to explain yourself to anyone. Just be you. Explain yourself to yourself first. All
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Nathan.
right, cool. Thanks, Michelle. See you
Yep.
around.
See you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.